All right. So recently there has been a lot of noise, misconception, and inaccurate information about the recent NAR settlement. And NAR, for those of you who do not know, stands for National Association of Realtors. And the settlement was in the amount of $418 million. So, who does it affect? Why did this happen? Who benefits from this settlement? Who does not benefit? And where do we go from here? I mean, just this week alone, I've heard like 5 or 6 different theories about what exactly does this mean and how is this going to impact the industry, buyers agents, listing agents, clients, sellers, buyers. So, this new rule is supposedly will take place when?
Well, this supposed settlement news came out on Friday. And all of a sudden, all the news everywhere, it was kind of like, oh my goodness, real estate is changing forever. A lot of headlines were coming through that kind of was on the scary side. And a lot of people were concerned. A lot of agents were concerned. Sellers were like, what's going on? Buyers got a lot of calls and stuff like that. So just so everybody knows, it's not set in stone yet. There was a settlement reached. NAR publicly made sure that they said that they do not feel that they are guilty, and they are not saying that they're guilty. And it's still under review, and a judge still has to agree to it. So it's still kind of all up in the air, and we will provide you guys guidance. And if there's any changes and stuff like that, tune back in, and we'll definitely keep you guys updated on that. So it's still a little bit fluid. But with the changes that were proposed, they're supposed to go into effect in July, based on what it is right now. Again, still subject to change, and we're
July
not attorneys.
2024, right?
Yes, July.
Okay.
We're not attorneys. We're not going to advise you on that, but we'll give you the best information that we can, as this is still a fluid situation.
Okay. So I think it probably will help if we go over the general like structure or how prior to this, how did real estate agents and brokers get paid? Because I think that the majority of people, especially those who have not either sold or bought a property, they don't really know exactly how real estate agents get paid, who pays them. So maybe we can go over briefly about what was normal for how many years, like decades and decades, right? Without any changes. So do you wanna go over that?
So typically, how it worked was that when a seller wants to sell a property, there was a listing agent involved. And typically in California, our contracts are not the same as Missouri, which, by the way, is where the lawsuit came from. The listing agent actually negotiated the full commission up front when they took the listing. So they negotiated their own commission, and they negotiated the buyer side commission, which was always negotiable. That's one thing that was kind of like a false thing that was given when this lawsuit came out, was they were saying that the commission was not negotiable and set in stone. That was never the case. Never
It was always negotiable,
It was
right?
always negotiable. So the listing agent basically negotiated that up front, and it was taken out of the proceeds from the seller. Most of the time, because a lot of buyers are first-time buyers, or the cost of living is always so expensive that it's like just another expense coming from the buyer's side. It was just making it a lot more difficult for buyers to be able to qualify. So that was just a standard practice, and that's how it was done for quite a long time.
Yeah, so especially for first-time home buyers, very often they have barely enough funds to bring for a down payment and their closing costs and all that. And now, if with this change, there could be a situation where the buyer's agent, already with limited resources, limited funds, has to bring potentially additional funds to pay the buyer's agent to find them a property. Is that kind of what it comes down to?
There's two things that changed with this settlement. Number one was the fact that now, since the commission is not negotiated up front with the seller, MLS will no longer show that. So that's the one change, is that Now MLS won't show what the buyer's agent gets paid.
Okay, so let's talk about the two things that are actually they are trying to change, or if the settlement is approved and it's already in place, what are the two things that are going to drastically change?
To be honest with you, the end goal is still always going to be the same. It's basically the structure that's going to change. The number one is we can no longer display what the commission is in the MLS, which is going to just basically change as a procedural thing in paperwork. And the second thing is that now every buyer is going to be required to sign a contract with an agent. So before, when you used to call an agent and say, hey, this house came out on the market, it looks really cool, let's go see it, they're not going to be allowed to show it to you until you sign a contract.
Is it an exclusive contract?
It is an exclusive contract.
Wow. We're talking about not disclosing the commission to the public or to actually real estate professionals who can go on MLS and see.
It's just mostly to real estate professionals.
Okay, so we're talking about not adding transparency, but removing some transparency, because they still can negotiate how much a buyer's agent will get if the buyer's agent brings a buyer. So they still can negotiate, but on MLS, they're not going to reveal that. So isn't that less transparency?
In a way, for sure. I mean, there was study after study done, and they, there's have been so many of these changes before, like, for example, like Redfin, and there was a Zip Realty that used to come on, and they would be like, if you use us as your agents for the buyer's side, we'll, give up our commission, and we'll give you this, or we'll give you a part of the commission, like a credit back and whatnot. And what the market has shown is that buyers, after that has come out, have still always chosen to have an actual buyer's agent represent them, because it's such a huge deal. So I think the study was that it was always over 80%. That I think it's closer to 87 actually, that buyers still would choose to work with a buyer's agent instead of going through this experience by themselves, because it's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
The way that it's going to have to work is, before, when this was something that was already kind of agreed up front, it's just going to be an extra step of the offer process, negotiation. A lot of times when an offer is submitted for a buyer, buyers ask for concessions anyways, right? There's always negotiations. Nothing in real estate is ever set in stone. It's always a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
So what's going to probably change is that when you're working with a buyer, you're going to have to, as the buyer's agent, now add this on as an extra step, extra paperwork. We all love paperwork. That you're going to have to put that on. And the sellers, if they have a good listing agent, should already know that it's probably going to be expected that most of the time buyers will come in with their own agent, because they do want their own representation. They do want somebody to inform them. I mean, this is like the biggest purchase in their entire life, right? Most of the time, people don't, they don't want, like somebody who's just kind of like part-time or whatever, and not have to go through all these steps by themselves, because they don't do this full-time like agents do, right? So a lot of times that buyer's agent is going to be there. And so if it's a good listing agent, that should already be discussed up front, but it's just going to be a part of the negotiation process, which is kind of cool too, because, back when the, how it is right now, when the commissions are up front, if you get an agent and the offer is kind of crummy, but the seller wants to work with them, and the buyer has only a certain amount of approval that they're approved for, but it's like, if you can just negotiate that commission just a tad bit, you can get them over the line. So it kind of, in a way, is a little of a positive source for the sellers and the buyers, meaning that, like, if the agent, can be a little bit flexible on commission, it might be a win-win for everybody. Because, there were times when we did have that situation, and I would sometimes even approach the agent, because the seller asked me to. Would the agent be willing to reduce their commission to this, since the buyer is already like, that's their maximum. They can't go above. They're approved to that, and that's it. And the buyer's agent a lot of times would like laugh and say, I don't ever discount my commission. Well, now they're going to be forced to, if they really want to get their buyer into the property. So in a way, could be positive.
Oh, yeah. I definitely. So when I reviewed this settlement and listened to multiple podcasts and stuff, and I was really trying to figure out who exactly does this settlement benefit, or the lawsuit, right? Because since it's a class action lawsuit, there was a pool of sellers who were behind it, right? But they were represented by a whole bunch of lawyers,
That's right.
law firms, right? So when you look at the settlement amount, which is $418 million,
Paid
out
over
of
4 years, yes.
yeah, out of this amount, how much does an actual seller who says I was a victim gets from the settlement, and then compared to how much does of this settlement goes to law firms and lawyers?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I would say that probably the biggest beneficiary of this are the law firms.
Absolutely.
Maybe even big conglomerates like Zillow and other companies who, or maybe Amazon. I've heard Amazon's trying to get into the real estate game, since now everyone is on Amazon. They're thinking, hey, since you're shopping already on here, but you're buying yourself all these things and even cars, maybe now you can buy a house like that. And in some ways, maybe it does benefit the seller, especially the seller that says, hey, now I'm not obligated to pay two sides commission, and tells us like a brokerage, hey, I'm only going to pay this much and that's it. Like you said, maybe there are going to be some positives. One of the things that I written down here about who benefits from the settlement, maybe real estate professionals who provide real value and who bring a lot to the table when it comes to dealing with buyers and sellers. What do you think about that?
That's a great point. Definitely, that's going to be a big deal. There's a lot of headlines already talking about how there are so many agents that are fleeing the industry because all these headlines that are coming out, and the days of the door openers, as we like to call them, is gone. Absolutely. So a door opener is basically, like especially with what happened with COVID and the market boom with the interest rates and whatnot made real estate industry super easy especially for buyers agents, right? So a door opener is like somebody who doesn't really have the experience, the knowledge, the expertise, the negotiation power, and all that stuff to help a buyer. All that they had to do was they got a call. Can I see this house? They open the door. The buyer walks in. I love it. Let's put in an offer. That's a door opener. Doesn't take any knowledge. Doesn't take any expertise. And a lot of times with the market the way that it was with the really low interest rates in the hot market, they were able to get away with it. So now it's like if a buyer is working with an agent and they have to sign that contract, you really have to show your value. What is it that you're going to give me as a buyer that is going to make me want to use you instead of going to a seller's agent?
Yeah. And then I think we know this kind of business model of door openers, agents who go out there, open the door, and they're employed by a company that they have a structure where it's not about the kind of service you provide. It's just you going out there, opening the door, letting and you don't really care whether
quantity over quality.
Yes, yeah. And like that agent doesn't really care whether these people are going to buy or not, because that's not the way they get paid, like traditionally, right? So now we mentioned who this lawsuit or settlement could potentially benefit. Who is most likely to be hurt by this? Because I looked at it from different angles, and the party or who is actually going to be most hurt kept coming back, and that was just buyers, first-time home buyers.
Unfortunately.
Because, first-time home buyer, this is something very new to them. They rely on somebody guiding them through the process. They're hiring not a door opener, they're hiring a guide, a consultant, even in some ways a
counselor.
Counselor. Like they want to make sure that they hire someone who can take them through this process and take away the stress, or at least alleviate some of the stress, be knowledgeable, and contribute with your knowledge, with your expertise, in a way where they feel like they are making the right decision. And especially first-time home buyers who have limited resources, like we mentioned, limited amount of cash to put down. Now it's going to make it a little bit difficult for them to buy a house. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. First of all, when we're talking about expertise, would you ever go to a surgeon and say, hey, surgeon, I need this and this done, and this is how you do it, and you open me up here, and then you do this and you do that. No, you go to a surgeon, and you are there, and you say, I need, this is what's going on. Please guide me, right? For buyers, most buyers will buy a house once every 7 to 12 years. That's kind of the standard. So this is not something that they do on a daily thing,
Yeah.
So especially first time
They
buyers.
have
It's their
regular
first time.
jobs, family obligations. Yeah.
Exactly. So I look at it like that. This is probably one of their biggest investments of their life, the biggest amount of money that they spend. So why would they look at it any different versus they need to go to a surgeon because they have a problem, or they need to go to a real estate professional that needs to guide them in this, right? So that's something that we need to look at. Even if you take back, I don't know, 2-3 years, just look at the cost of real estate. Has it gone down? Has the affordability gone down? Absolutely not. So now it's like they want these first-time homebuyers that have been saving all this money, or that they're trying to save money and all this time, right? And now it's like, hey, buyer, you just got yourself another expense. Congratulations.
Yeah.
It almost seems like this lawsuit went and created kind of like a burden for first-time buyers especially, right? Because now it's like, now they're thinking, especially with all these news articles and stuff that are coming out, they're like, that's another expense that I have to pay. Who's going to look out for me, right? So, I mean, it kind of like, you look at it and it's kind of like, what
Yeah.
good did it really do?
It doesn't really make sense for a buyer to have additional burden, because when you look at home prices, recent increase in interest rates,
Right.
it's already becomes much more difficult for average family, average home, buyer to purchase even a starter home. And now, on top of that, this happens.
Right. And the other thing is, there's some points talking about this is a great thing because now sellers are going to reduce the prices of their homes. Have you ever met a seller that is willing to reduce the price of a home?
It's not going to happen.
No, they always
It's not
want
gonna
top
happen.
market. Everybody wants top market for their
They
house.
see what the similar homes sold 3 months, 2 months back.
Correct.
And they want even more than that home sold.
Right.
So they're not going to say, oh, now that I don't have to pay the buyer's agent, let's reduce the price. Of
Right.
course not. Absolutely not. So that's a myth. That right there is.
And that's something that the sellers have to think about. If they don't have it in their net sheet, their proceeds, that there's going to be a buyer's agent, now all of a sudden, a bunch of buyers that would have qualified for their house had they gave them that, now they won't be able to qualify because now they don't have the funds to do it. They have to come up with that. So that's just another thought that sellers should think about, is like, yeah, you think it's a really great idea, but all of a sudden you just lost a whole pool of buyers that can't afford to pay all the loan closing costs, title, insurance. They have to pay for inspections. There's a lot of things that buyers have to come out of pocket for. You want them to pay for that? You just lost a bunch of buyers. At the end of the day, the sellers need to look at, what do I net, right?
Yeah.
And if my listing is exposed to a lot more buyers with agents, that will bring me net what I need. That's all that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah. And that's part of what we do, is educate the seller or the buyer in this area, where we'll say, look, we can sell it like this. We can try selling it and not even thinking about a buyer's agent, but you're going to have a limited pool of buyers. But one thing that I would say potentially is a positive in our industry is that the people who will also be potentially hurt by this are the real estate agents who entered this industry wanting to make a quick buck. Those agents who do not really care too much about improving, providing exceptional service, they got into it because everyone was talking about how easy it is to make money in this industry. And I think, this is just my personal opinion, is that the industry got oversaturated with real estate agents like that.
I agree. There's a lot of agents, and you and I, we deal with multiple agents throughout every day, have a lot of communications with agents and so forth. And I agree. There's a lot of agents that I personally feel need a lot more education, guidance. Maybe this is their second job, third job, side gig, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it comes back to the client, right? They have to be able to give the kind of service to their client that they need. And when they don't have the time to put into this, if they don't have, the knowledge and whatnot, maybe they're not the right person to represent their buyer, right? And maybe they don't deserve that kind of commission. So this is just a time for real professional agents to show their value and to show that this is why I'm worth it. So yeah, for sure. There's already a lot of agents that are scared running and kind of like, they think that the world is over and they're looking for other employment opportunities. And you know what? That might be the right thing for them. If they cannot handle this kind of stuff, if they don't really provide a value to their clients, they probably shouldn't be in the industry anyways.
Yeah. And this brings us to this other topic that I wanted to touch on is evaluating true value of a real estate agent. What is the real value that a real estate agent, or in this case, a buyer's agent, brings to the table? Because recently we had a lot of changes in the way how people purchase or find homes. Right now, mostly everyone, they have a smartphone. They can go on their favorite Zillow app, which Zillow, oh my gosh, man, sometimes it deceives people because, the values, sometimes like a home that they say is valued, let's say $700,000. A similar home down the street gets listed at 545, and now this home that yesterday they said it was worth 700, now it's saying it's worth 600 because of that. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, but anyway, so people now, they can go on Zillow, they can go on realtor.com, they can go on Redfin or whatever, right? And look at homes that are for sale or sold by themselves. So now, where you look at 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people didn't have that. So they relied solely on, being given a list of potential homes for sale by their realtor. So because of that, because of the easy access to homes that are on the market, I think there's a shift that happened in the way people search for homes and buy homes. So now buyer's agents really have to not just prove, but first understand like what value do they bring to the table that they should get paid whatever the commission is, right?
Absolutely.
Because like, again, I think that recently, like, our industry got oversaturated with a lot of realtors. Almost anyone you ask, they know at least 5 to 10 agents, right?
Minimum.
Yeah. And also the perception of how easy it is to make money in real estate. All these different shows on HGTV
And the entry level to become a real estate agent.
What is that?
Oh, it's very simple. You just take online courses, you
I
pass
thought it
an
was
exam,
a
and that's it.
4-year degree education. So yeah, I really believe that, even though this settlement isn't really good for especially home buyers, I think that this is the time where real estate agents, especially those who mostly work with buyers, now they're gonna have to really prove their worth, which is a good thing.
100%. I mean, just after when this thing came out on Friday, I've been doing a lot of research, and I was just kind of in my head thinking about the different points, like what we as real estate professionals, what do we offer or what can we do for our agents, right? And I thought of at least 90 different points of what a buyer's agent and what we offer, what our team offers to a buyer that they wouldn't get. Okay. Just put yourself in this situation. Okay, you're a first-time buyer, right? Great, you found a home on Zillow that you love. Wonderful. What do? You call the agent and you say, hey, I want to put in an offer. What does an offer look like? What are the terms? How do you know what are the terms? How do you know what you're supposed to do? What is an earnest money deposit? When is it due? Do I need inspections? How long do I need inspections? Who do I call? What happens after inspections are done? Like, how is a buyer who has never done this before supposed to go through all this on their own without having somebody point them out, right?
Well, it's definitely going to create so much stress to the buyer and also create a chaos where a transaction could have went on, very smooth, regular 20 to 30 days, right? And now this presents a huge issue with creating chaos in a transaction.
Yeah, there was a recent study actually done that took a few agents that worked with buyers, and they took the amount of average text messages between, from a buyer to get into contract, just to get into contract. Over 500 text messages, just text messages
From a buyer to a
from
real
a
estate
buyer
agent.
to get into contract between the real estate agent and the buyer.
Wow.
That
Dang.
sounds about right.
It is.
Right?
Especially, I would say probably more than 50% of the buyers that in every aspect they have not just one question, they can give you like 10 questions at a time.
Right.
What about this? And the further you go into transaction, the more questions come up. And you know what? When you were saying all this, I remembered my first deal as a real estate agent back in 2011, right before we opened our brokerage. I remember very, very vividly how I found this property in Fair Oaks, and I wanted to pitch it to an investor who I already knew was flipping homes, right? And he was in the business of flipping houses. He was not in the business of finding the deals. He wanted to come look at the property, make a decision, purchase the property, fix it up. Fixing up was probably like 90% of what he did. Was he was at the projects working on make sure that it gets fixed up the way they wanted, remodeled, updated it, and then he wanted to sell it for a profit, right? So he was relying on us to get him a project where he's actually going to make money, right? And on that project alone, I remember it was a super profitable project for him, right? And because of that and similar situations following that first deal, that's one of the things that made us so valuable. And like a lot of investors and home buyers started calling us because the word spread out that we were giving these guys deals where they were making such good profit that it was unheard of. The people that were seasoned, that were already doing it for many years before we came in the industry, weren't even producing these kind of numbers. But because I sat there and I was like researching neighborhoods, looking at which neighborhoods have the most potential to go in and get that deal, right? How long did he need to actually work on something to actually figure this out? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of research. But they don't even want to do that. They want to rely on an expert, rely on someone who does this for a living, who does this full time, who knows areas, who has relationships, who can negotiate. Because negotiating, that's another huge factor. Imagine someone who has a full-time job, a family. They cannot be on the phone with the other party for hours and hours per day negotiating on their own behalf. That's just unrealistic.
Well, not only that, but when a seller has a listing agent, the listing agent has a fiduciary duty to the seller.
To the seller.
Right? So here you have, let's say, first-time buyer, right? Let's say it's a multiple offer situation, which is very often here, So with the low inventory and stuff that we have. How is the buyer supposed to negotiate? How does he know? Like if the first-time buyer is competing against a whole bunch of other offers, and there could be other buyers that are more seasoned and they understand this, how is a first-time buyer supposed to know all this stuff and navigate through all these multiple offer situations? And if you're ever been a buyer and you've had to deal with these where you lost out on homes because there was like multiple offer situations and whatnot, imagine having to do that on your own without the guidance of an agent. Wow. Just think about that.
What about in a situation where, let's say, a listing agent takes on a listing and an offer comes in and the seller says this, the seller says, if you bring a buyer, I'll pay you this much.
Right.
If somebody else comes in, then you get this much, which is a lower number, right?
Right.
Let's say an offer comes in without representation, and then this listing agent has his buyer. Whose offer is he going to want the seller to accept? And what does that create?
Hopefully it's an ethical agent that will present all offers. But we have seen situations like that. You and I both have witnessed many situations, unfortunately, where the agent has put higher stance on the offers that benefit the agent versus the client. Unfortunately,
Of course.
we're all humans, and sometimes people are motivated by greed, and it happens that way.
I was kind of, also thinking about this. To me, it just seems like, like there's always this percentage of those agents who, whenever opportunity presents itself, they are willing to cross the line, right?
Right.
I think that this settlement gives them even a bigger opportunity to cross this line. So I'm almost like, asking a question like, is this not a recipe for even more lawsuits?
Well, one of the reasons why they did settle, they say NAR, meaning they is NAR, is to hopefully prevent more lawsuits. That's kind of one of the reasons that they gave of why they're settling, even though they continue to prove that they're innocent in this.
Well, that's what comes to NAR, but I'm
Right.
talking about lawsuits against agents and brokerages. If there is more opportunity to do some, let's say, nicely shady stuff, unethical stuff, for example, potentially it can bring a lot more lawsuits when it comes to consumer and the agent or the broker.
So that's a really good point. And here's another thing that we have to keep in mind, right? Veterans, okay? VA loans. We love our veterans. Absolutely. They, are amazing. And part of what a VA loan is they are not allowed to pay commissions. So what does that mean? So is America and the DOJ now going to say, sorry, veterans, thank you for, for all this, everything that you've done for us, but if you can't pay your agent, you can't buy a home? No. So that's why it's still all up in the air. There's going to be changes that are going to be made into contracts, into financing. Possibly some of the things that, banks are starting to talk about is maybe buyer's agent's commission will be able to be financeable and things like that. But see, that's why it's still very fluid.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
with the way that the lawsuit is now, it kind of puts FHA buyers and especially VA buyers really the ones that are hurt the most,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So changes are still going to happen. I mean, being in this industry, been through a housing bubble, been through a turmoil, been through COVID, all that stuff. The only thing that is constant is change,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
We had to change the way that we did business when COVID hit, right? There was a lot of adjustments. A lot of agents that I knew that were like really successful kind of closed their doors and like, we'll figure this out how that happened. With you and I, we had a lot of clients that we need to serve. So what did we do? We just we researched, we figured out what we need to do. We adapted, we changed, we were successful. Our clients were happy, all that stuff. So this is just another detour to get to the same spot, right? We are still always going to put our clients first, right?
Absolutely.
Our team is always going to look out for the client's best interest. Maybe there's going to have a little bit more paperwork involved and whatnot, but that end goal to get our clients the highest amount of money for their home with the less amount of headache, and to find our buyers their dream homes, guiding them through all that stuff so that they feel like they know what they're doing and getting the best deal. That's still our end goal. There might be a little detour paperwork and stuff like that. That is still going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that even with this settlement, with this change, I still believe that the future is bright
Absolutely.
because our focus will always be improving and providing better and better and better service, service above self, and sometimes we call it unreasonable
Hospitality.
hospitality. Um, and if this is our true motive, and this is how we rally our agents, our team, and these are our values, and we really hit hard, and strive to become better and improve every day, I believe that we're gonna see and have a lot more opportunities, and it's going to benefit those who want to improve and adapt and get better for the sake of their clients, their community.
For sure.
So to kind of wrap this up, I wanted to, first of all, debunk this myth. A lot of people were saying that, oh, the prices are going to come down because of this, because now that, the commission potentially will be less, the prices are going to come down. Honestly, as we mentioned already here, that we don't think that home prices will come down. I don't think it has anything to do with that. Sellers will always want
Top dollar.
for their property. Not all sellers, but most sellers,
Have you met one?
They're always, they're always stretching you, right? They're coming to us. Hey, what do you think my home can sell for? We look at the prices, the condition of the home, comps, everything. We give them a number, and what do they usually say?
They want higher.
Always. So
Always.
we just don't believe that the home prices are gonna come down because of this. Absolutely not. At our company, at Estock Realty, we will continue providing our clients with exceptional service.
Absolutely.
No matter what changes. Who knows? This week it's NAR settlement. Tomorrow it could be something else. All we can do is study, see what's happening, adapt, stay ahead of whatever the changes may be. Always innovate, be creative, and serve our clients. If you have any questions regarding NAR settlement or anything related to real estate, please don't hesitate to give us a call, reach out to us, and we would love to help you.